Well, very good afternoon to you. Switch my screen on and let's see what happens. Yep, very good afternoon. If you're in the Middle East, or if you're in Europe, good evening. If you're in Asia, Australia, very good morning if you're in the Caribbean, our friends in the Caribbean, or North America, Canada, or the United States. And welcome to today's Crossing Borders broadcast, which, as you know by now, is the IMC streaming service, which we created back in early March this year to bring together the investment migration industry and to keep you guys informed and connected. So a few words of housekeeping. If you haven't seen one of these broadcasts before, don't worry, you can watch them on our YouTube channel. They're available free to view on Catch Up. And whilst you're there, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you get all the latest updates as soon as we publish a streaming event. Remember, you can ask questions during today's session. So you've got the GoToWebinar widget, which is on the right hand of your screen. And if you click on the handout section, you'll also find information about the Investment Migration Council. We've got some information about our certification project and program in that handout section. And there's also a handout about Latitude Consultancy Limited, who are today's sponsors. So there are nearly 90 of you today. So please hit the questions or the chat. We want to try and keep this as interactive as possible, and to keep you engaged, we always have a little bit of polling. So I'm going to hit that polling button and give you about 10 seconds just to let us know where are you watching us from today. All right, so we normally stop the polls when we get to 80%. So we're at 74% right now. So stay engaged and let us know where you're from. Okay, we're at 80%. So I'm going to close that off and share the results with you. So overwhelmingly, 63% of you from Europe and Africa, 17% from Asia Pacific, 10% from the Americas, 7% from the Middle East, and 3% from the Caribbean. So I hope my guest today took a note of that. I'm going to just close that off, and that is interesting. Also, please remember that at the end of today's broadcast, we'll have a little bit of 1-minute video about how you can get qualified in investment migration through the IMC's certification program. But what are we talking about today, and who do we have with us? So today we'll be discussing how investment migration has become a crowded space, often with tighter margins, few barriers to entry, and particularly in the Caribbean, it's essentially become a fully commoditized and transactional offering. So according to some people, there's little prospect for the traditional CBI product to grow in the near future, but the residency products, on the other hand, are poised to make some kind of comeback, and there is interest in grade A nations like the United Kingdom, Germany, Canada, Australia. A lot of these countries are now back in people's minds and becoming favorites. And they are, of course, interesting for active entrepreneurs rather than passive investors. So, in light of that, and also thinking that more of our economies post SARS-CoV-2 are going to need an injection of liquidity or reconstruction capital for the economies, both from a human level as well as a financial level. So I'm hoping that we'll get a lot of answers and a different perspective from three of my guests today, which I'm delighted to introduce. First of all, Eric Major, who's the Chief Executive of Latitude Consultancy based in Jersey. Eric is, of course, one of the pioneers of the investment migration industry. He spent some 25 years helping private clients to relocate to different parts of the world. He's done a lot of government advisory on the creation of successful IM programs. Eric, who also formerly HSBC's Global Investor Immigration Service founder. I think that's took place some 25 years ago. And many of our audience and viewers today will, of course, know you as the chief executive, or the former chief executive, of Henley and Partners, in which during your 5-year tenure at the firm, you oversaw the opening of some 20 offices for the firm, and a real period of immense growth for that company. So very warm welcome to you, Eric.
Thank you.
And Christopher Willis, who's the Managing Director for Program Delivery at Latitude. And Chris has been in this business since 1995. Chris, you were the Managing Partner for Henley and Partners in the Middle East, responsible for the Americas and Caribbean. I beg your pardon, not the Middle East, but the Americas and the Caribbean. You were based out of St. Kitts, I believe, and you looked over Antigua, St. Lucia, Grenada, and of course some of South America, I believe. Chris is a member of the Immigration Consultants of Canada's Regulatory Council, the ICCRC, and the Canadian Association of Professional Immigration Consultants, otherwise known as CAPIC, and you've also served on the Quebec Board of Directors for CAPIC and on the National Governance Committee. Very warm welcome to you, Chris. And finally, not least, Brandon Ing, who's the Head of Marketing for Latitude, and you're in charge of all global marketing initiatives, and you're the guy who brings innovation and creativity to Latitude, particular focus on digital marketing strategy, adopting new platforms that need to generate these leads for firms, and engage with a more tech-savvy, younger generation, not like myself, Chris and Eric, who are a little bit older. So looking forward to having a frank chat with you as well, Brandon. Okay, and all three, I should point out, are members of the IMC. So just remember, everybody, if you've got any questions, then hit that button on the right. And as ever, we make this as interactive as possible. I'm going to switch the screen so you'll be able to see that there is a presentation also. Let me get that on the screen. Let me just minimize this, and here we go. So today, of course, is all about adding value. I want to come to you, Eric Major. We talk about citizenship programs and residency programs. Often, citizenship is the one that's more controversial and gets talked about more than residency programs, but there is a lot out there for people to choose from, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for people to have a better understanding of what is exactly right for them. From your perspective, which countries are the top of people's minds with the clients that you are speaking with? And then secondly, why do you think those countries are at the top of people's minds?
Well, thank you, Bruno. Once again, everyone, thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. It's great to see such a diversity in the viewership this afternoon and this morning and this evening for all of you. Thank you once again. Well, I've been reflecting a lot about that question, Bruno, particularly in the last 3 months, as to where are we going post-COVID? What is COVID doing, not just to the world, but more particularly to our industry? How's that affecting our client's psyche, their psychology of what they're thinking for them and their family? I think particularly in the first early months, after March, we were seeing, at least I was seeing very early on, a comeback of more the traditional large jurisdiction markets, where people were asking about what are the ways one could invest to acquire residency into the UK, into Germany, into Canada, and a little bit of Australia as well. But those have always been traditional markets, to be fair. But it seems like COVID has brought back this sense of, this need of, yes, rule of law, and there's still the prevalence of English as a language that draws a lot of interest to these markets from an educational point of view in particular. And also, I was recalling, a few years ago where environment came into the picture as well. Like, people are choosing the nation based on water and food supply and the quality of air. And clearly in the last few months, the word healthcare and health facilities and how certain countries have coped with this phenomenon that we've experienced, which is I haven't seen anything like it in our lifetime. So, and there's been some, I won't say winners and losers, but clearly some countries have done better than others. I point to in the Western European world, Germany's done actually quite well with this. Portugal has had also some successes. And so that's also part of the psyche and the decision making. I won't diminish that, mobility, which is what the citizenship offering are about. I think that there certainly was a pause. Obviously, we couldn't travel, so there's less of an impetus of wanting to facilitate having our mobility. We just didn't have it for the last few months. So that, in my mind, has put a pause. Although some thinking beyond the mobility aspect do realize that alternative citizenship is more than just mobility. It is that insurance policy in case the world around you changes, and it may not be because of a pandemic, but because of other things. And so I think that's not gone totally away. If anything, I'll admit that I may be surprised how it's held. It's still a conversation that we're having in our offices in Dubai, in our offices in Vancouver, in our offices in London. So that's still relevant. But I think the general sentiment is that these countries that are, what I call the more traditional migration countries are making a comeback. Now, as they stand now, those countries are favoring more an active investor or entrepreneur as opposed to the traditional passive investor cases. I talk of my homeland of Canada and I talk of the UK. So in fact, I'm just reminded, as we already started onto the subject matter, but if you allow me, Bruno, now that I've answered your question, and picking up on my colleague Chris Willis's rightful backdrop here of the flags, does anybody know what today is? July 1st, right? Does anyone want to volunteer? Well, maybe the microphones are not on. Obviously, today is Canada Day, July 1st. I'm very proud to say happy Canada Day to all my Canadian colleagues, but no less the three of us here, we were recognizing this morning and yesterday that hey, we're all Canadians. Chris is Canadian from Montreal. Brandon's out originally from Vancouver. And I am technically born in Ottawa, many of you don't know, but raised in Montreal. So we're three proud Canadians. And if you allow me, Bruno, this indulgence of just wanting to create an engagement with our audience and really inviting them to interact with us with questions from that will ensue for our presentation. If I could ask you to press to the next slide, just in keeping with this Canada theme here. Who's in control of the...
I think we can do that, yeah. We have somebody who's come in and said, we want to wish Eric a happy Canada Day. That's from Stephen Pepper. You clearly know each other.
Well, Same to you, Stephen, because I know you're a Canadian as well. Oh, is it maybe the
You want to
slide,
click
the
to the
latest?
next one or this one?
Yeah, no, I think it's the one earlier. No, I think Brandon sent you the one without that slide. Yes, that's the one that's going to be shared with our guests. Listen,
This one?
no, it's not there. That's the one he sent you this morning, but
Okay, so you
it's the
know
one
what?
he
Let me
sent you
switch.
yesterday.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to switch my
Because in
screen off,
fairness, that's okay,
and
Bruno.
we'll
That,
get
yeah,
the
and that's the one that you're sharing. And Brandon, this is the one that you're making available to
Yeah,
share. Is that correct?
we gave two presentations, the ones you can download, folks, and then the one for our presentation today. So just slight mix up on those two PowerPoints.
No, no worry. Okay, let me have a look at that and we'll get that on screen. So I've got final and final PDF. Let me see what
Yeah.
happens with this.
But that would have been from last night. Am I right, Brandon? Or yesterday?
Yeah, I sent two copies through, one a clean version for download and then the other one. So
All right. So while we get that technical issue sorted out,
Let me dovetail into the topic before I hand it over to Brandon.
please.
So listen, this presentation and this discussion is about how it's important to add value, particularly in a post-COVID world. I mean, we're talking about an industry that's maturing. This is an industry, we could probably say it's over 30 years since its inception on the residency side and already 15 years on the citizenship by investment side. So, well, you could say even further if you look at the original St. Kitts citizenship program in 1984, but its reinvigorated reboot was in 2005. And so we have these two magnificent growing and maturing industries. And it's obviously has a lot of participants, which was the opening that you provided, Bruno. And so the general starting point to succeed in the future, particularly post-COVID, is how could one add value to the business, whether it's our business, your business in the RCBI. I'm talking to IMC members, so obviously we're all like-minded individuals who are doing what Latitude does. So we have some views that we want to share with you about that. How could you add value to the industry? And of course, the IMC plays a big role in that, but we have some ideas and comments around how the industry prospers and adds values and grows. And then, frankly, for you individually as well, as to what it is that we could be doing to add value and bring a brighter future to all of us. I see you now have the screen again. I don't know if this is the right time to bring that second page, just while we are on the topic, and then I'll hand it over to my different. There we were. There we were. So this is our mini poll question, very simply in honor of Canada Day, whether any of you want to venture this, and we'll ask for the answers at the very end of the presentation. Which of these celebrities is not a Canadian? And I'll have you all have a quick look at it, and then we could move on to the second slide, and we will revisit this slide at the back end.
I think, is it William Shatner? It can't be Canadian. He was born on this, the USS Enterprise, right?
Well, that's your answer. We'll record it for the record. This is recorded.
But for the other viewers, though, of course, please send us your comments in chat. So which of these celebrities is not Canadian? And I'll give you a clue. Celine Dion is definitely Canadian, isn't she, right? So which one is not Canadian? Let us know in chat.
But we will answer. We'll address that answer at the very end. So let's move to this slide. Thank you. So these are the 3 points in which we want to tackle today in our presentation in terms of how we at Latitude feel that we could help you and give you ideas around how to add value. And if there was any doubt amongst all of us about the importance and the effectiveness of having a proper and well-developed online presence, digital strategy, well, COVID has certainly proved it. How different our lives would have been in the last 3 months if we didn't have video platforms like this, if we didn't have LinkedIn, if we didn't have Facebook, to disseminate the information and the message and the communication, to create the hooks, to engage in a conversation with a client. And this is really what the modern day business and this digital world that we're in, which Latitude is so excited and enamored about, is to us. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my marketing guru and digital master, Brandon Ng, who coordinates all of this for Latitude and does a wonderful job, and to provide his insight as to what we've done basically here at Latitude, but also how it could help you in your business. So Brandon, over to you, please.
Thanks so much, Eric. Bruno, if I can get the next slide, please.
Yeah, sure. I think it's interesting because Brandon, you come from a slightly younger generation than Eric, myself, or Christopher. So I guess the transition for you, in many ways, like I've seen with my children, from going to school to all of a sudden everything is being done online. The younger generation seem to have transited through that very easily. So I guess that's a lot of the work that you've been doing at Latitude is about engaging through online platforms, right? So I think people will be really interested to know what edge you guys have in this area. So
Yeah,
please go ahead.
for sure. So, I mean, Bruno, to give context, I am 100% a millennial, and I really embrace that term in terms of us being generation that grew up primarily with the internet. I still remember what a dial tone sounds like when you're trying to get online, but we're very much a digitally savvy generation, and it doesn't mean age is not really a determinant. I think, guys, it's really about how young in spirit you are and about adopting the modern world, right? And thinking about this device, your lifeline, because I think at the end of the day, guys, it's whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, you just got to go where the attention is, and so the attention might be on this today, and then it might be on your wrist tomorrow, right? So as a firm, what we try to do is create content or materials that are just speaking to people how they want to be spoken to, and giving you the information how you want to receive it. And it's just as simple as that. So there's a couple things, I really want to highlight, the fact that, as you guys know, that we've seen a paradigm shift away from these kind of hard copy things to more digital things, as I've been mentioning. But, I think what I want to instill today is the spirit of better together. And what that means is that as an industry, what we're finding is, direct leads and the hook for direct leads is great when you can do it yourself, but when you can partner with people that are in other markets that you're not strong on or you don't have a footprint in, that's where we as a company really thrive, because there's certainly things that we're strong at and we can help provide to our B2B partners, a few I'll be talking about today. But on the other side too, there's certainly things in new areas that we aren't strong at as a company, and we would love to entertain those conversations of how can we partner together to be better together. So, I think what I want to stress is a couple things that we can do as a company. The videos, the program sheets, the fact sheets, those are fairly standard and things that we offer in the partnership. But moreover than that, where I see the true balance and true benefit is, as opposed to a single practitioner and they're going, well, I can submit X number of files myself, where the better together comes in is partnering with another practitioner that can do the volume and can contribute and speak to the government and demand higher pricing, for example, for certain programs when you're submitting 50 versus 5 to 10 a year. So I know Eric and Chris will have a few more thoughts on that, but that's kind of that togetherness and power in terms of tangibility. But if we go to the next slide, guys, what I want to do today is just take you through kind of two tools which I think that we've developed in-house that I want to share with you guys. So the first one, you might have seen this if you're up to date on your IMA daily reading. But this is called the Country Access Tool, or the CAT for short. So why is this tool useful? We always have questions as practitioners saying, okay, great. First one is clients going, what are the visa-free countries? You know, and then you throw out the 151 or the 143 in terms of visa-free access. That's important information, but easy to find online. What we did with this tool is we made it a bit more simple for the practitioner when we get the question of, okay, well, for specific countries, because clients are always looking at 5 or 6 particular ones in their head saying, these are the ones I really truly want visa-free access to. That's where knowing country A has unique countries over country B. For example, Grenada has China, whereas Antigua doesn't. That's the determinant for a lot of clients saying, I'm going to spend potentially the little bit of extra money to go with Grenada because it's going to give me exactly what I need. So we've created this tool for the industry, made it available online. So if you go to Latitude World /CAT, you can check out this tool, and it's for all the primary hot citizenship by investment programs. But this is kind of just a warm up, and what I want to take you over to is kind of something that I've been really working on hard and internally and ready to share with the world now, as kind of a bit of a sneak peek before we go live in mid-July. And that is the, Bruno, if we can get the next slide. Perfect. This is called the PET, the Program Estimate Tool. So you know it's a bit of a theme going on here in terms of the naming, but more importantly, this will be memorable because this is a game changer. And why is it a game changer, guys? Because for a lot of reasons. I think as practitioners, you're say, for example, you're on the phone with a client and you need to get a quotation very quickly generated. And not all the time is everyone experienced and well-versed in terms of all the specific agent fees, government fees. So we made it super simple. You become a Latitude partner, you log in, you fill out a couple fields in terms of your name, your dependents, and the program of choice. And then you hit generate, and within 1 second, 2 seconds, you're given a full PDF, completely bespoke to you, completely whitelisted with your own logo and your own footer. So I don't think anyone else is doing this, and this is something that we're making available exclusively for our partners. So you'll be able to generate quotes instantly, 24 hours a day, without having to approach the company you partner with. We set up the arrangement, we set up the kind of the terms, and then you can generate your quotes yourself. So this is really powerful, and just again in the spirit of moving towards digital and moving away from manual work and headaches, and moving towards a free head, you know, doing as much business possible in the easiest and portable way possible. So anyways, guys, thanks so much. That's over to Chris.
Yeah, well, before that, I'm going to say, Brandon, I'm going to throw in a little piece of this because I was also very excited with CAT when I could actually finally see what one citizenship had over another without having to visually one by one compare them as we used to do in the old days. And so now within a few clicks, you could see that. But add to that, you could have that CAT result and instantly also create the PET result. So as you said earlier, if you see that whether it's Grenada or St. Lucia winding up costing 5 or 10 or 20,000 more, but it yields, as shown by the CAT, these extra countries which are important to you. And I always give the example, I was talking to a Nigerian client, and yes, of course they want visa-free travel to the UK, of course they want visa-free travel to Paris and Europe. But this particular chap wanted absolutely, no matter what, visa-free travel to South Africa. Well, guess what? Antigua. The other ones don't have it, at least not all of them. So this was actually worth the premium in this case, because he had large, actually it was a single applicant. So there was a slight premium in choosing that Antigua over something else, but he was okay with it. So you can see the power of having both combinations is going to, again, in the spirit of giving the best information to the client, is going to be helpful to practitioners.
All right, guys, I just want to back up here because we don't, you know, have a lot of time on these webinars. Just quickly, Brandon, what is, again, what's the difference between this CAT and these pets, and you might have a dog as well up your sleeve that you're working on? We don't know, but just briefly, so the CAT, again, what is that, please? And then what is the pets?
Yeah, so simply put, the CAT will quickly compare your countries, your citizenship countries to each other, one versus the other. So it's a country.
Yeah, so point to the unique visa-free travel in this example that you're showing, Bruno. Antigua is basically has the following countries over Grenada. It has visa-free travel to Albania, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, etc., which Grenada does not have. And conversely, Grenada, as it shows below, has Argentina, Israel, Tonga, which Antigua does not have. So it's pegging two citizenship programs and not saying what they have in common. They all have the UK, they all have EU, they all have Hong Kong, they all have Singapore. It's pegging what one has over the other that the other doesn't have.
And how many programs can you put on your screen with this thing? You've got
two at a time.
1 and 2. Can you put 3? Can you put say kits as well, or or Anguilla in there?
You got to compare. You got to compare it to 1. You can't really compare to 3 because there's going to be more than one crossover. It's only one to another. Although once you've done Grenada, you could do another one. You could do Antigua versus St. Lucia as well. I mean, they're all there. There's 7 or 8 citizenship programs in there right now. And PET, explain what PET is once again, Brandon?
If I could just jump in very quick with the CAT. I mean, it's super easy to use and very visually appealing. So, you even, screenshot that and add it to a client who's comparing one over the other. It just helps with your sales process as well. So that's one of the things I find from it is just quick and easy to use. And as Brandon said, if you're speaking to someone and they ask you that question over the phone, you can get that information, in a matter of seconds. And again, very quick and easy to decipher.
All right, and so the CAT's available right now. What about the PETs, Brandon? Quickly, what's that one about?
Yeah, so again, the PET, guys, is simply for our Latitude partners, this is a tool we make available. It's completely bespoke. So you got your own logo on there if you choose, your own footer on there if you choose, and this is for all the residency and citizenship programs. So we'll create an instant quotation for whatever program instantly, any time of the day.
So Bruno, if you're on the line and you're talking to somebody from Qatar who's got a family of 4, and he says, I got a wife, I got a child who's 12, I have a 14-year-old daughter, you put 12-year-old, 14-year-old, and you put spouse, boom. Well, next question is which program? You could put Portugal. Is it Portugal real estate in Lisbon, or is it Portugal with real estate down south? Is all of these options, boom, instantly.
All right, and then presumably this is updated all the time, right? As changes come in. I mean, it's an obvious question.
And as of late, as you know, Bruno, as of late, with all the changes with respect to dependents that we've been reading in the Caribbean and so forth. In fact, that's a good segue for you, Chris, because I know you've been busy, talking about how we could add value to the wider industry. So that's a good segue to the next slide, if you will.
And just before you switch over, I think the again, just the theme of Canada Day, if you're a Canadian practitioner or an American practitioner and you're just used to inbound, this tool allows you to expand your product base. So, you maybe have that client who says, yeah, I want to find out about Grenada, right away you can get that. It's maybe not your core business, but it gives you a platform to expand your business, which is something that people are looking at now, with, there's pressure points for all the firms, when it comes to the economy. And so the more you can offer to your clients, the stronger that you'll be. And just as a little kid to Brandon, who works extremely hard, and I would say within Latitude and the pet theme, he's probably our dog, and I would call him our digital online guru, right? He can be our internal dog.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Digital online guru, I love it. Yeah.
So now we got to figure out, our next animal. Hopefully it's not an elephant or an armadillo, and then we'll be okay. So, all right. So
much longer, but yeah, Chris, tell us about your slide. What are the takeaways? What do you want to highlight from this, please?
Yeah, I mean, the key thing here is that, I touched on the economy, and a lot of countries obviously have been hit hard, by the the cessation of travel and tourism. You know, the Caribbean in particular, this all hit during the high season, and for many of the Caribbean islands, they have a huge dependency on tourism in terms of their country's revenue. And so, you know, what they've been doing, as we've seen, is some refinements or incentives, limited time offers, promotions, whatever you want to call it, to help stimulate interest in their own countries. You know, we've seen variations, whether it's, you know, St. Lucia made an adjustment to their donation to the amount of the investment. As the family gets larger, then the price is lower than what it was previously. And you know, they've also, along with Dominica, expanded the definition of a dependent. You know, so it's all about including more people on an application. And you know, I think everybody's very conscious about getting underneath that $100,000 floor for the level of investment. So they're finding different ways to do it. But what we're seeing as a firm is there's been a lot of people coming back to us who are maybe thought about this a year ago, 2 years ago, and realizing, you know, the what if is right now. You know, it wasn't like, you know, oh, it'll never happen, I'll get to it, and then suddenly they're finding themselves in a situation where they didn't plan properly, and they need to have this this insurance policy, if you like, and extra flexibility for themselves and their family. You know, and you know, Eric touched on the issue of healthcare, and this is something that's becoming you know, more and more part of the conversation. You know, and you know, let's say you have somebody from you know, a third world country who's a wealthy person and quite used to having their medical treatment in Switzerland or in the UK, and then they realize, you know what, I can't get into these countries because I don't have status. I'm not a resident, I'm not a citizen. So therefore, they're subject to the medical facilities in their home country, which may not be so good. So then, you know, then they realize, you know what, I wish I had, you know, my residence card in Portugal and have access to their healthcare system. But also what people are looking at is, you know, if we look in the Caribbean context, is how well have these islands dealt with the crisis? And if I was to, if there was to be another similar pandemic, if I chose to put myself in one of these islands for 3 months, will I have access to healthcare? Will I have, will there be a big contamination on that island, or how well did they handle it? So they're looking at these types of statistics to say, you know, which countries did well in the management of COVID. So it's the perspective is definitely shifting. And you know, certainly with respect to other countries, you know, who are struggling economically, they're now starting to entertain possibly having a residence or citizenship by investment program. You know, certainly from the government advisory side, I mean, Eric and I have been in touch with over a dozen countries recently, just talking about these types of scenarios, and them trying to figure out how do we position ourselves to capture, you know, part of this market, and also to help our country economically. So, you know, that's certainly what.
Yeah. Sorry to interject. With all the countries that you're speaking to, are there? Can you name specific countries who will launch either a RCBI or an RBI program the next 9 to 12 months?
I can't at the moment for, you know, it probably would be unfair at this point, you know, to let any cats out of the bag, as it were. Staying with our animal theme, yeah, but yeah, no, I think there's definitely, there will be more announcements. I mean, we expect, you know, in the coming days to see something out of St. Kitts in terms of a refinement, and more than likely something out of Antigua and Barbuda as well. So there's be some other tweaks forthcoming, as opposed to a brand new program coming out. I said, watch this space. You know, there's a few things happening. I think a lot of it may be refinements, you know, and sort of having those sort of type of stimulus programs to kickstart investment into the country. But the other thing is this: if people are considering, you know, promoting these programs, it's a great time, because, you know, the deals are on the table. The countries, you know, want to do business, and so they're putting out these incentives. You know, whether that is bringing in, you know, extra family members on the same application, or reducing the amount of the investment, whatever the case may be. So it's actually a good time to promote these programs, because once everything settles down, then those deals may not be as readily available as they are now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'll add a comment to that as well.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the process of launching a program, be it residency or citizenship, maybe citizenship in particular, is quite an arduous and often lengthy process. What's happening now, however, is that governments are actually prepared to listen and to discuss it, not just the finance minister who dwells in the world of finance and fiscal situations and economics. They see it, but other ministers as well saying maybe we need to look at this. So I think already there's engagement, but it could be a 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, but it's a conversation. In fact, I'm almost certain that we have government representatives on this call today that are looking at this, exploring whether their country could actually be wanting to do it and just trying to understand it more. And I'll endeavor to say that with each passing month, it'll be even more pronounced because governments are still very, very, very busy just sorting things out, trying to understand how to get themselves, the country, out of the C-19 situation. And we're still not out of it yet. Make no mistake about it. This thing is still lurking around and we all worry about a second wave. But the fiscal situation dwells there and is not getting any lighter and any easier. So some are looking in, keeping their eyes open on it. So if I was to make a prediction without naming countries, there'll be at least 2, if not 3 citizenship programs over the next 12 to 14 months, and residency, lots of tweaking. Most countries have a version of it now, but there's going to be definitely something dealing more on the investment side than we even in my homeland. So stay tuned.
I have a question for you on your government advisory, and then we've got 2 questions that have come in as well, which are pertinent to the conversation. With those 2 programs you're mentioning, Eric and Chris, are there any European member states?
Well, if I told you, I'd have to shoot you, and I don't want to do that.
You can't. We're on a Zoom conference.
You're trying to nail down the geography of it. Well, listen, Chris and I we could say that we are talking. We've made some submissions to one. We've made submissions to a European country.
No, more than one. Yeah,
actually, no, you're right. More than one. Yes, yes. Now, again, are they a 4 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 to implementation? But they are looking at everything, and that's my point. Country's going to be looking at everything. Think about it. UK, £2 million, 5-year. I'm not saying the UK is talking to us. I'm simply saying, do you not think post-Brexit, post-C-19, that they're going to be looking at the investor category? They've already got the innovator visa, but with the neighborhood around them at 500,000, at 300,000, at 215 euros, and they're at £2 million, that's an easy target. If the UK doesn't revisit that, I'll be very, very, very surprised.
Yeah, and I think it's also going further up their level of urgency. You know, whereas in the past they maybe would sort of shelve it, but now they're realizing, look, we need to generate some revenues, and so let's accelerate this conversation a bit more.
Well, yeah, because they also need to attract talent into the UK, and you know the way Brexit talks are going, they're not really going anywhere. If you speak to or listen to what Michel Barnier has to say, and he tends to be, you know, the authority on Brexit. Another question that's come in is, can you please give us an update on the famous Moldova withdrawal? So what is your perspective on that, Chris Willis?
Well, I think it's probably unfair for us to comment because we're not the concessionaire, and so we don't have any insight on that. So, you know, I would defer that to the concessionaire to deal with. But I think it's been unfortunate, yet, you know, with the different changes of government and how that was handled, it was initially a good news story for the industry of another, you know, attractive proposition for the market. And, you know, for whatever reasons, you know, whether, you know, and I'm not privy to them, it didn't work out. And, you know, how that unfolds to be determined, but it's very difficult, you know, when you're dealing with governments, and especially a change of government, in terms of how they're going to take things forward.
All right, okay, and then another question which has popped up twice in a similar way. I'll do a little bit of translation. This is regarding the island of Malta. I have heard that the program will stop taking applications. I'm a little bit worried because I've got a number of clients who we've been discussing the possibility of Malta, doing a comparison with Cyprus, I'm a little bit worried. What is this perspective? What is the situation from your
Sure.
perspective on Malta? Is it stopping its CBI program?
I'd like to handle that. I'm sure my managing director in Malta, Ryan, who just did a webinar literally 2 hours ago on this, would love to jump in, but I was listening to him, so I'll just repeat what he said. The program is leading towards a reboot. It will end in September, but there's 2 steps to the Malta citizenship program. You first have to get residency before you could graduate to citizenship. That whole process is 15, 16 months long. So the last residence application as the pathway to getting citizenship will be received and accepted on July 31st. And so there's a big mad dash now that we're July 1st to get those appointments in those meetings for the biometrics. And then we have the citizenship. We have the citizenship deadline, which is September 30th, and for which the so-called 1,800 applications will be capped off and finished. I wouldn't worry about it. Some background noise. Sorry, something's happening there.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't worry too much about. I mean, Malta will come out with a new revised program. There's no doubt about that. Will it change a little bit? Yeah, there was a lot of talk about what that change could be, but I've since heard that some of the ideas that they originally had are being again revisited. Why? Because of COVID. So hard to predict what this new version of the Malta Individual Investor Program will be, but it will be. I have no doubt in my mind that this government will reestablish what has been a proven success story for the nation, despite its political challenges at times. I mean, Malta is in the most privileged position in the hardest of times right now, throughout all of the world. I mean, really, if you look at it, 210 countries. Right now, in terms of report cards, Malta is probably in the top quartile of positions to get itself out of COVID. Why? Because of the MIP. Let's face it. And other good things that Malta offers, but to have that kind of liquidity sitting in a bank account is what nations need. Savings, otherwise they got to go borrow it. So no doubt in my mind that Malta will come back. Like I said, there was had you asked me 3 months ago, I'd endeavor to say what I think they're going to do. But now I think they're actually revisiting it all once again. But I'm told they're sticking to their deadline. July 31st for residency, September 30th for citizenship is the answer.
Okay, brilliant. So guys, we're getting short on time, but better together. Lots happening. What is your prediction in, if you can, let's look at, the next 3 to 5 years for, investment migration? Where do you think this is all going in view of, all the changes that are taking place, potential regulation in one way or another? Let's start with you, Eric. I think you've been doing government advisory for a number of years, and then I want to come to Chris, who's of course the IMC rep office representative for the Caribbean and very much in touch with Caribbean governments. So I'd like to have your thoughts of what's happening on the ground and over there. And then, as Brandon labeled himself a pure millennial who remembers dial-up connections. Your perspective on this as well, Brandon. But Eric Major, please.
Yeah, well, thank you, Bruno. I think no one has a crystal ball. I pull out mine once in a while and look at it, but it's always a little foggy. But I look at the general trends and the situation of the industry. And again, repeating what many of you have heard me say before, we've been very fortunate as an industry to have constant growth and demand driven by the creation of wealth around the world, double-digit growth in millionaires and in wealth creation for the many past decades. What's also been exciting is the supply side. So what used to be just a 4 or 5 country thing has become a 70+ country thing. We all these countries now have a a residency, and growing number of them are creating citizenship programs. So that's exciting. What has changed, and even to a degree more severe and more pronounced than I would have given credit for 3 years ago when I launched Latitude. It's busy out there. There is a lot of firms and practitioners and stakeholders doing what we do at different degrees of depth and sophistication, but practitioners doing residency and citizenship by investment is a growing number. So it's a crowded marketplace, and those countries and programs that are very simple, transactional, are being commoditized, and there's margin pressure. So how do you work your way through this? Well, it's like everyone will tell you in every business magazine, you got to add value to the equation to survive. For us, it's been pursuing government advisory initiatives and discussions to tweak existing programs and creating new ones where we can. In engaging with our clients has been through our digital activity and creating those hooks to have those conversations. They don't replace the conversations. There's always a human touch at the end of this. You can't do this business without the human touch. But what you could do digitally is create the awareness, the message, and the hook, and that's what we're really focused on. I think also looking at it, because it's so crowded, and realizing there's a lot of small players. I think there was a statistic that said that 80+% of practitioners have less than 10 employees in this business. So a lot of one-man bands or very small shops. Great, healthy industry. That's why they're there, but they need help. So we've taken this approach of being very collaborative and engaging in this B2B relationship making, knowing that they may have a strength, our partners may have a strength in the market that we don't. Let's do business because we need help there. But at the same time, you need our platform in Malta, you need our platform in the Caribbean, you need our pricing power because of the traffic that we drive as a firm. And so we could relate that in addition to the tools that Brandon touched on. So, the 3 to 5 years before I hand it over to Chris is that it's crowded, it'll continue to be crowded. One of two things are going to happen. There's either going to be consolidation, so what I call a vertical approach, where people bound up, create bigger structures to cover the world and do more of it, or there'll be there'll be horizontal offerings where firms are going to add other ancillary services in addition to helping them move and acquire residency and citizenship. Maybe talking about fiduciary services, corporate services, maybe providing property and estate services, as well as taxation, for example. So it's going to be a combination of horizontal add-ons or consolidation vertical. And then finally, before I hand it over to Chris, is the IMCs also plays a big role in this. Right now, we're in this best practice kind of world, and I really like the fact that you've opened it up to certification and courses. That has to continue because there's more and more people. So how else are we going to ensure the standards are there unless we give them a course, a certification process to ensure that they're approaching the industry the right way and the clients the right way? I don't think it's going to go fully regulated, but I think that, as we were discussing the other day, I think there'll be other ways in which the regulators are going to capture this industry. Chris, did you want to add to that from maybe a government point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think the point about having the certificate in investment migration is a great starting point to lead to an overall message to the industry and to clients that if you are going to be engaging someone to represent you for your residence or citizenship by investment application, is to look for members of the IMC. Because they've been vetted, best practices, code of ethics, etc. But it comes down to a consumer protection type of model as well. So, and we've seen this with other industries that, there's at least a degree of accountability for people who are members of the IMC, because the challenge is on the enforcement side. So if you're not a member of the IMC can't really do much, which is a challenge. But, there's relationships with local governments so that, if somebody is working to represent in one of the Caribbean countries, and they're not acting in the right way, then that jurisdiction would be the ones to apply any type of enforcement. So we would like to see in the next 3 to 5 years that more and more people are becoming IMC members and or completing the certificate of investment migration, and then the IMC can be more active in promoting the IMC and the value of membership, not only to practitioners but also to potential clients, and so that there's a greater camaraderie around the industry to show that everybody's interested in promoting best practices, and that way those people who are entering the marketplace, we said there is a low barrier to entry, that they maybe will not, if they don't want to invest the time and the money to be a true professional, then maybe they shouldn't be in this space in the first place. So that's part of the message we want to bring out. And just very quickly from the Caribbean context, we spoke about some of these incentives, about some countries are now expanding the definition of a dependent. Have some, consistency, just at some levels, within the OECS, saying the definition of a dependent includes, if you want to include a sibling under 18, over 18, dependent, financially dependent, living with you, let's just have a common definition to apply for all 5 countries currently offering a program. And there's other elements too that can be applied with the same model, so there's some consistency, so that it's not always one country chasing another or trying to promote their program as being stronger because they've got this extra element. There's some areas I think there can be some consolidation. So that's my quick prediction or wish list, I should say, for the next 3 to 5 years. And now I'll hand over to Brandon.
Yes, Brandon, your perspective on this, please.
Yeah, absolutely, Bruno. What I want to talk about is more about digital fitness, and again, maybe it's the millennial in me, but I get questions from various levels of both our partners that we deal with and even internally in terms of new technology. And questions are great because it means that you're trying to get your head around it, and that's what I think where I think the industry needs to go is away from the hardcover books and programs and printed material, and starting to get a general understanding, at least, of how we can be using technology to better assist ourselves to communicate better with not only with each other but with the client. And so what I really urge people to do over the next 2 to 3 years is just, when you hear all this crazy stuff about Google AdWords, go onto YouTube, watch a 30-minute, 45-minute video that will just take you through what the heck does Google AdWords mean, and because these small things that you could be doing and understanding yourself, because, I have a mentor, his name is Gary Vanderchuck, and he says, be a practitioner first. Don't always rely on the guy next to you to do it. Be a practitioner, and then you can then delegate down, because unless you understand it yourself, you'll never appreciate it. So anyways, that's kind of my 2 cents. Everything's on YouTube, guys, and again, if you need assistance, help, I'm probably going to be the guy you end up speaking with if we end up having a more of a longer conversation. But I relish those conversations because I'd love to teach anyone that's willing to listen. So anyways, that's my 2 cents, Bruno.
All right, can we follow you on Twitter and LinkedIn, Brandon, Eric, Chris? You guys are all on that.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Bruno, if you go to the next slide, all our details are going to be on the next slide at the end.
There you go. You see.
Perfect. And
good one. Yes. Now, before we have people sign off, though, I really want to know what people thought were the who these people are and who is not a Canadian. Has anybody written, Bruno, to you to make any suggestions?
I am not going to name and shame people.
Well, you're on the record with William Shatner, and I'll at least dispel him. He's a fellow Montrealer.
It doesn't belong on that list. And I think I'm not the only one either, actually. Because I had somebody who says, where are we? I remember reading somewhere that Shatner actually renounced his Canadian citizenship.
Oh, well, then
How's that?
Then he would be the only answer, because the punchline to this slide is a trick question. We have them
Mike
all.
Myers.
Sorry?
Mike Myers we had as well. He's not Canadian. Is that right?
He's definitely Canadian. 110% Canadian from Toronto, just outside of Toronto. Yeah.
All right.
So
Oops.
what's that last slide show you? I don't know if it shows you who. No. Well, anyways,
what's the answer, Eric?
They're all Canadians. It's a trick question. Every single one of them is a Canadian.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
We had a few. Yeah, you see, there's quite a few here saying, yeah, you see, they are all Canadian. It's a trick question.
There you go.
London saying this. David Lesperon is telling us this.
He's also Canadian. Yeah, he would know, and a few others there. Steve is online, but no, it was just a little fun to just in honor of our native land. But I did want to thank you, Bruno, for having us. It was lots of fun. I hope the viewers enjoyed it as well. And did you say that all of this is actually videotaped or taped, or recorded, I should say?
It's certainly recorded, and we will, in the next few hours, upload, as we do normally, the recording this session, and you'll be able to see that on our YouTube channel. And if you press subscribe, then you'll be automatically updated on all the changes that come in. But I want to thank you, Eric, Chris, and Brandon for joining us today and taking the time to prepare and share your knowledge about the industry and what things may look like in the next few years. And a particular thanks to our viewers from pretty much all corners of the world today. Thank you very much for taking the time from your morning, your lunch, or your evening to have joined us. I hope you did once again enjoy this IMC streaming Crossing Borders program. We will be back on Wednesday, the 8th of July, at same time, 2:30 Central European time. And we'll be talking with the founding and past president of KPIG, so an ex-colleague of Chris Willis from the Canadian Association of Professional Immigration Consultants. And also joining me will be an immigration lawyer and policy analyst, Richard Kurland, also from Canada. So as you can imagine, the theme will continue. It's not Canada Day next week, but we'll be talking about the trends of business opportunities and immigration into Canada. So that's next Wednesday, the 8th of July at 2:30 Central European time. Until then, I want to once again thank you to my speakers for joining us. Thanks to you guys for tuning in. At the bottom of your GoToWebinar widget, there are lots of handouts about the IMC and about Latitude Consultancy, who helped us and sponsored today's events. And until next time, I'm going to leave you guys with a short video about IMC's education and training certification. So please hang on and let me get that kicked off. So until then, thanks very much. Bye, everybody.
Introducing the Certification in Investment Migration from the Investment Migration Council, the first structured learning product of its kind globally, designed for you. Explore the bite-sized learning pathway of each module on our custom online platform. You can track your progress as you go and learn at a pace that suits you, with an estimated 5 hours of study time per module. The Certification in Investment Migration contributes to the development of professional competencies and standards for those new to or already working in the industry. So, what are you waiting for? Visit our website to start your learning journey today.